My oncologist cleared me to return to work. I cried in the parking garage for 20 minutes before I could drive home. Not because I was sad, because I was terrified of how much I'd missed, how thin my savings account had gotten, and whether the life I'd worked so hard to build was still waiting for me on the other side of those glass doors. I'd been gone for 14 weeks. 14 weeks of chemo, of losing my hair in clumps on the bathroom floor, of eating crackers at 2 in the morning because that was the only thing that didn't make me nauseous, of my 8-year-old daughter drawing me pictures of us at the beach because she said it would help me think about getting better. I taped every single one of them to the wall beside my bed. When I walked back into Lakeview Property Group that Monday morning in February, I honestly expected awkward. People not knowing what to say. Conversations that stopped a half-second too late, the kind of careful, tiptoeing kindness that's almost as exhausting as the illness itself. I was prepared for that. I'd rehearsed it. What I was not prepared for was Gwen. Gwen had joined the company about 3 months before my diagnosis. I didn't know her well before I left. She was in listings coordination, I was in client relations. Our paths crossed maybe twice a week in the break room and once in staff meetings. She was sharp. I remember thinking that. Good at reading a room. She had this way of laughing at the right moment that made people feel like they were the funniest person she'd ever met. I found out pretty quickly that she used that skill very deliberately. My first week back, I was on reduced hours. HR had arranged it. 3 days a week, half days, easing back in. My manager, who I'll call my direct supervisor, was supportive. She checked in with me, made sure my caseload was manageable, left a card on my desk signed by the whole team. Normal, decent stuff. Gwen stopped by my desk on my second day back. She leaned against the partition, arms folded, head tilted, with this expression that I can only describe as performatively sympathetic. Like she'd practiced it. "You look so much better than I expected," she said. I thanked her. I wasn't sure what else to do. Honestly, when you first left, we weren't sure you were coming back at all. She said it conversationally, like she was commenting on the weather. I mean, nobody said it out loud, but she shrugged. Let the sentence hang there. I remember staring at her for a second, trying to figure out if I'd misheard her. "Well," I said, "here I am." She smiled, nodded, and walked away. I told myself it was just a clumsy thing to say, that she didn't mean it the way it sounded. I had enough to manage without adding a workplace conflict to the list. My energy was still not back to normal. I was trying to rebuild my client relationships, and I was doing all of it while coordinating my daughter's school schedule as a single mom. Because her father had been out of the picture for 2 years, and that wasn't changing anytime soon. So I let it go. That was my first mistake. The second week, I was in the break room heating up soup. My appetite was still unpredictable and soup was safe, when I heard Gwen talking to 2 of the younger agents in the bullpen area just outside. She didn't lower her voice. "The thing is, you just never know with these situations," she was saying. "Like, she looks fine now, but remission isn't the same as cured. My aunt went through something similar and she was back in treatment within a year. You kinda can't build a whole pipeline around someone who might just..." She stopped. Made a vague gesture I couldn't see but could picture. "You know." I stood there with my hand on the microwave door. I don't know how long I stood there. When I walked out of the break room, Gwen looked up, held my gaze for exactly 1 second, and then turned back to her conversation without skipping a beat. The 2 younger agents both found something very interesting to look at on their computer screens. After that, I started paying attention. The comments were never loud enough to report and never quiet enough to miss. She'd refer to my situation in meetings with this careful vagueness, as if saying the word cancer might be contagious. When a high-value client got reassigned to me, she mentioned in passing to our supervisor in front of me that she hoped it wasn't too much pressure given everything. When I closed that deal 2 weeks later, she congratulated me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and added, "Good for you. Honestly, after everything you've been through, it's nice that you can still do this. Still, after everything, as if my career was something to be salvaged rather than something I was actively building. The worst part wasn't even the comments themselves. It was what they were doing to the way people treated me. I could feel it happening slowly, a shift in how I was included in conversations, whether my ideas were taken seriously in team discussions, who brought me in on collaborative projects, and who found quiet reasons not to. I'd come back from cancer. Gwen was making sure everyone treated me like I'd also come back damaged. I went to HR in my 5th week back. I want to be clear about this, because I know it's the first thing people ask. I did not just tolerate it quietly and then suddenly snap. I went through the proper channels first. I sat down with the HR coordinator, whose office smelled like the vanilla candles she kept on her desk, and I walked her through the specific things Gwen had said. I had written them down: dates, settings, approximate wording. The HR coordinator nodded a lot. She made sympathetic sounds. She told me she understood how sensitive my situation was, and how important it was for me to feel comfortable in my return to work environment. Then she said she'd have a general conversation with Gwen about maintaining a supportive team culture. I asked if there would be any documentation. She said she didn't think we were at that point yet. I left with a printout of Lakeview's wellness resources, including, I kid you not, a hotline for stress management. Gwen's behavior didn't stop. It got more sophisticated. She started framing her comments as concern. I just want to make sure we're not overwhelming her. I think she's still adjusting. We should probably loop someone else in on that. She was so practiced at it that I started to wonder if I was being oversensitive. That's the thing about a certain kind of workplace cruelty. It's engineered to make you doubt your own perception. I wasn't doubting mine for long, because Gwen made a mistake. Our company used an internal messaging platform, one of those team communication tools where you could create group chats. There was a main company channel, department channels, and then project-specific threads. What Gwen apparently didn't realize or forgot was that the IT department had updated the platform settings 2 months earlier, which meant that certain group chats that had been created as private were now visible to anyone with manager-level access. My direct supervisor had manager-level access, and one morning, my supervisor sent me a message asking if I could come by her office when I had a chance. I remember thinking she wanted to discuss a client update. She closed her office door, which she doesn't usually do, and turned her monitor toward me. There was a group chat, 8 people in it, all of them junior agents or support staff. And in this chat, over the past 3 weeks, Gwen had been narrating my return to work like a running commentary. I'm not going to repeat all of it, but I'll say this. She had told the group that she'd heard from someone in billing that I had missed my last 2 client check-ins. I hadn't, that she thought it was only a matter of time before my performance review reflected my health issues, and that she'd started covering some of my responsibilities informally because she didn't think I was fully back. That last one made my stomach drop because I knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't covering my responsibilities informally. She was positioning herself to absorb my client base. She was building a case with an audience that I was on my way out, so that when she started picking up my accounts, it would look like a natural transition rather than what it actually was. She was trying to take my job while I was standing in it. My supervisor was livid. I don't think I'd ever seen her that angry. She kept her voice very calm, which somehow made it worse, and she told me that what she was looking at constituted both a harassment complaint and potentially a breach of the company's non-disparagement policy. I need you to know, she said, that I'm taking this to HR and legal. This isn't a team culture conversation anymore. I believed her, and she meant it. But here's what I need to explain about what happened next, because this is the part people usually want to know, and the part that took me a while to figure out how to talk about. My supervisor handled the formal process. HR, legal, documentation, the whole thing. That wasn't mine to manage, and I didn't try to manage it. But I had 3 weeks between when my supervisor found that chat and when the formal process reached its conclusion. And during those 3 weeks, Gwen didn't know that any of it was happening. She kept coming to work. She kept making her comments. She kept performing concern. And I made a decision. I was going to make sure that by the time the process ended, Gwen had no mystery about what had happened or why. Not because I wanted revenge, or not only because of that, but because people like Gwen operate on the assumption that they're invisible, that the systems around them are slow and that no one is actually watching. I wanted her to know, precisely and in detail, that she had been wrong about that. So I started keeping a very visible record. Every time she made one of her carefully calibrated comments, I responded to it directly, out loud, with specificity. Not defensively, not angrily. Just clearly. Gwen, you mentioned you've been covering some of my responsibilities informally. Could you send me a list of what you've taken on? I want to make sure I'm not missing anything and that the credit is going to the right person. The first time I did it, in a team meeting, the room went a little quiet. Gwen smiled and said she didn't want to make a big deal of it. I'd still like the list, I said pleasantly. Just for my own records. She never sent it because there was nothing to send. She hadn't actually covered anything. But I'd said it in front of 6 people, and 6 people had heard her decline to follow up. I did this every time. I asked for documentation she didn't have. I CC'd my supervisor on responses to her emails. I brought up her concerns about my capacity in contexts where they could be examined rather than whispered, and every single time, they dissolved on contact with actual scrutiny because they weren't based on anything real. And I did one more thing. There was a major client presentation coming up, a development group from out of Phoenix looking to purchase commercial property in our region. Big deal. The kind of deal that gets talked about internally for a year. My supervisor had assigned it to me. I had been working on it for 2 weeks and I was ready. Gwen had inserted herself into the preparation process by offering to help coordinate logistics. My supervisor had allowed it. She didn't want to tip Gwen off that anything was coming. So Gwen thought she had a front row seat to what she believed would be a demonstration of my limitations. I prepared for that presentation like I was defending a dissertation. I knew the client's investment history, their preferred property types, their concerns about the regional market, their timeline. I had put together a 40-slide deck and then cut it to 22 because the most powerful version of information is the one that doesn't waste anyone's time. I had prepared for every question I could anticipate. I slept 8 hours the night before, which felt like a miracle. The presentation went well. More than well. When the Phoenix group left, one of them shook my hand and said they appreciated that I'd clearly done my homework. His exact words. Gwen stood near the door during the handshakes holding a folder she hadn't needed to open. That afternoon, my supervisor called both of us into the conference room. She thanked Gwen for her logistical support, and then she told Gwen that effective end of the pay period, her position was being restructured. The company was consolidating listings coordination into a shared services model. The role as it existed was being eliminated. She could apply for other open roles internally if she chose to. The decision had nothing to do with performance, my supervisor said, just restructuring. Gwen looked at me. I looked back. There wasn't anything to say, and I didn't say it. She cleaned out her desk over the following week. I happened to be on a client call when she came to say goodbye to the bullpen, so I only caught a glimpse of it from across the office. She had a cardboard box with a plan on top, which struck me as oddly normal given everything. I'm not going to tell you I felt completely at peace about all of it, because that would be dishonest, and this whole story has been about honesty. I felt relieved. I felt something adjacent to satisfaction, though that word isn't quite right either. What I felt most was tired, a specific kind of tired that comes from spending months defending your right to exist in a space that you earned. What I didn't expect was what came after. About a week after Gwen was gone, one of the junior agents, a young woman who had been in that group chat, stopped me in the hallway. She looked uncomfortable, which I understood. She'd been in the audience for something that wasn't great. I just wanted to say, she started, and then stopped, and then started again. I should have said something sooner. I knew it wasn't right, what she was saying about you. I didn't think it was my place to. She stopped again. I asked her name. I knew it, but I wanted her to feel seen, not cornered. She told me. Listen, I said. You're early in your career. There's going to be a moment in almost every workplace where you have to decide whether the cost of speaking up is worth it. I don't think you're a bad person for doing the math and coming up with the wrong answer that time. Just, next time, do the math differently. She nodded. I think she might have teared up a little. I went back to my desk and called my daughter's school to confirm I could pick her up early for her dentist appointment. Completely normal. Completely ordinary. That's the thing nobody tells you about surviving something hard, the part after the crisis. People expect a dramatic transformation, some visible monument to what you went through. A new apartment, a lifestyle overhaul, a lesson you deliver like a keynote speech. What it actually looked like was me. In my car, in the school pickup line at 3 in the afternoon, listening to my daughter talk about a disagreement she'd had with her best friend over whose turn it was to be line leader. And feeling, for the first time in what felt like a very long time, like the ground under me was solid. I didn't handle Gwen perfectly. There are things I'd do sooner. Go to HR earlier and push harder. Document from day one. Ask my supervisor directly whether the chat platform settings had changed. 14 weeks away from any job changes the ground under you. I came back without a full map of the new terrain, and that cost me time. But here's what I know. I came back from cancer. I sat in a hospital chair and let poison drip into my veins on a schedule because it was the thing most likely to let me keep living. I watched my hair fall out and I put my daughter's drawings on the wall, and I kept going. Gwen thought she was watching someone falter. She was watching someone rebuild. Those are completely different things, and I think the distinction matters. Not just for my story, but for anyone who's ever come back from something that was supposed to knock you out permanently and had to fight for the right to be taken seriously in the aftermath. You are not your worst chapter, but you are also not obligated to let anyone else narrate it. That's the truest thing I know how to say about the whole experience. I'll take it. I've thought about this a lot since everything settled down. Not obsessively. I don't have the bandwidth for that, and honestly, my daughter keeps me too grounded for that kind of spiral. But I've thought about it in the quiet way you think about something that genuinely changed you. Not the crisis itself, the part after. What Gwen did wasn't random. That's the thing I keep coming back to. She made a series of choices, each one building on the last, each one counting on the same assumption, that I was too depleted to notice, too grateful to make noise, too precarious to fight back. She was doing the math on my situation and deciding, repeatedly, that I was a safe target. That's not cruelty in a vacuum. That's a pattern. And patterns have a direction they move in. What I've come to understand is that every one of those choices cost her something, even when she couldn't feel it yet. Not because the universe keeps score in some tidy, cosmic way. I don't believe in that kind of accounting. But because every time you treat someone's vulnerability as an opportunity, you sharpen a particular edge in yourself. You get better at it. And the better you get at it, the narrower your world becomes, because eventually the only people left around you are the ones who haven't figured out what you are yet. Gwen ran out of those people. For a long time, I thought the lesson of what happened to me was about standing up for myself. And that's part of it. I should have documented earlier, pushed HR harder, trusted my own read on the situation from week one. Those are real things I'd do differently. But the deeper thing, the thing that actually changed how I move through the world, was about intelligence. Not the kind you put on a resume, the kind that comes from paying attention. Gwen thought she was the one paying attention, watching my stamina, watching my client numbers, watching how people responded to her carefully worded concern. But she wasn't watching the platform settings. She wasn't watching how my supervisor checked team dynamics. She wasn't watching me. Preparation isn't just about working hard. It's about knowing the terrain so well that when the moment comes, you don't freeze, you move. I had 22 slides and I'd already cut 18 that didn't belong there. That's not luck. That's the kind of thinking that comes from respecting the people in the room enough to not waste their time and respecting yourself enough to be ready. The junior agent who stopped me in the hallway afterward, I think about her too. She made the easier choice when it cost something to make the right one, and she knew it. What mattered to me wasn't that she apologized, it was that she knew, that she was already doing the work of becoming someone who wouldn't make that same calculation again. That's the only thing that actually changes anything. Not dramatic gestures, not public accountability, just someone privately deciding to do better next time. I came back from 14 weeks of treatment, and I built something I was proud of. Not despite everything. Alongside it. That's the only version of resilience I believe in anymore. Not the kind that pretends the hard thing didn't happen, but the kind that keeps showing up, with full knowledge of what showing up has cost, and decides it's still worth it. My daughter drew me a picture once, during the worst of it, of the two of us at the beach. Stick figures, blue crayon water, a yellow sun. I still have it. That's the whole point, honestly. That's all of it.